I still remember that Sunday morning as if it were etched in my bones. The sun was warm, the sky was clear, and my hands were nervously gripping the steering wheel as I pulled into the circular driveway of Regency Oaks Country Club, the most exclusive club in the city. I hadn't been there in years, not since my parents made it clear that I didn't fit in with their image of perfection. Back then, I was a college student, wearing thrifted jeans, messy buns, and carrying my old laptop everywhere. They hated that I didn't dress or act like their glamorous country club friends. But that day, I wasn't coming as their awkward daughter. I was coming as something entirely different. I parked my sleek black car near the entrance, watching expensive vehicles glide past. Mercedes, Bentleys, Porsches, exactly the kind of company my parents had always aspired to keep. I wasn't wearing a designer dress or stilettos. Instead, I walked out in my favorite ripped jeans, white sneakers, and a simple navy shirt. It wasn't a fashion statement, it was intentional. I wanted to walk in looking exactly the way they used to mock me for. I wanted to see their reaction before revealing the truth. As I stepped through the glass doors, the familiar smell of expensive perfume, polished wood, and freshly cut flowers hit me. The dining room was bustling with families dressed to impress, clinking champagne glasses and laughing too loudly. At the center table, just like always, were my parents, surrounded by their friends. My mother was wearing her signature pearl necklace. My father was gesturing animatedly, the kind of theatrical confidence that made everyone lean in when he spoke. The moment my mom's eyes landed on me, her smile faltered for half a second. My dad, on the other hand, didn't hide his reaction at all. He barked loudly, "Oh my God, she looks like a maid. Who let her in here dressed like that?" His friends laughed uncomfortably, unsure whether to join in or look away. My mother leaned toward one of the women at the table and whispered something that made them both smirk. I felt a sting in my chest, but I didn't flinch. Not this time. I walked calmly toward their table, as if their words slid right off me. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, Mom," I said evenly. "Happy to see me?" My mother forced a smile, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Sophia, darling, we weren't expecting you." She glanced down at my jeans, then back at me. "You do know this is brunch at Regency Oaks, right? Not a garage sale." Her friends chuckled behind their napkins. I gave a small shrug. "Yeah, I know exactly where I am." My father laughed again, louder now, clearly enjoying the audience. "You can't just stroll in here looking like that and expect to sit with us." "Manager!" he suddenly shouted, waving his hand dramatically. Heads turned. The club's floor manager, a well-dressed man in a navy suit, hurried over. "Yes, Mr. Thompson?" the manager asked politely. My dad pointed straight at me. "Get the owner, or whoever is in charge." "This person looks like she wandered in from the kitchen. She's embarrassing us. I don't know how security even let her through the door dressed like that." For a second, the manager's eyes flicked to me. There was a spark of recognition in them. He smiled politely, almost amused, then turned back to my father. "Of course, sir," he said. But instead of leaving, he straightened his tie and addressed me directly. "Ma'am," he said, his tone respectful. "Would you like me to cancel their membership today?" The table went silent. My father blinked, confused. "What?" he barked. "Why are you asking her?" "She's not..." But the manager didn't look at him again. He was waiting for my response. My mom's fake smile vanished completely, replaced by a look of dawning horror. A few nearby tables had noticed the exchange, and whispers started rippling through the room. I didn't say anything yet. I simply gave the manager a slow, knowing smile. Inside, my heart was pounding. Months of planning were finally colliding with this single delicious moment. All those years of being underestimated, mocked, and dismissed were boiling to the surface. I wanted to savor every second before dropping the bomb. I leaned slightly toward the manager and said, "Not yet. Let's give them a chance to behave." His lips twitched into a small grin. "As you wish, Ms. Thompson." The way my father's face twisted in confusion when the manager addressed me so respectfully. It was priceless. My mother's hand tightened around her wine glass, as if she needed to anchor herself to reality. Their friends glanced at one another, unsure whether they should stay quiet or pretend they hadn't heard anything. I took a seat at a nearby empty table, crossing my legs casually. "Don't mind me," I said with a grin. "I'm just here for brunch." They didn't know it yet, but their world inside this club was about to flip upside down. For the next 20 minutes, I sat at my table quietly, watching their discomfort grow like a crack spreading across a mirror. My parents kept whispering to each other, throwing anxious glances my way, while their friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My father was a man who thrived on control, on being the loudest, the most respected in any room. But that morning, for the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty flicker in his eyes. He didn't understand what had just happened between me and the manager, and that terrified him more than anything. The waiter approached me with a warm smile. "Good morning. Ms. Thompson, the chef has prepared your usual brunch, compliments of the house." I couldn't help but chuckle softly. "Thank you," I replied. His respectful tone echoed across the room, loud enough for my parents to hear. I watched my mother's jaw tighten as a silver tray with a perfectly plated spread, eggs, smoked salmon, fresh croissants, and a tall mimosa was set before me. It wasn't the food that mattered. It was the way everyone around us noticed the treatment. In this club, status was everything, and in their world, I had just outshined them. My father couldn't take it anymore. He pushed back his chair and walked toward me, his expensive shoes tapping against the marble floor like a drumbeat. He leaned over my table, lowering his voice, but not enough to escape the attention of nearby diners. "Sophia," he hissed, "what is going on here? Why are they treating you like you own the place?" I raised one eyebrow, savoring the irony. Because I do." His face froze. "What?" I calmly sipped my mimosa, then set it down. "You heard me. 6 months ago, Regency Oaks went bankrupt quietly. No one knew. I bought it under an investment firm, changed the board, restructured everything. And as of 2 months ago, I own a controlling share. So yeah, technically, you're sitting in my club." The blood drained from his face. For a man who had spent decades bragging about his status here, this was a blow straight to his ego. You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," I said smoothly. "The manager knows. The staff knows. The members' committee knows. The only people who didn't know were you and Mom. Shocking, right?" My mom finally stood up and joined him, clutching her pearl necklace like it could somehow save her from the truth. "Sophia," she said, her voice trembling between disbelief and embarrassment. "Why didn't you tell us? We could have supported me." I interrupted sharply. "You mean the way you supported me when I said I wanted to build my own company? Or the way you supported me when I couldn't afford my rent after graduation because you decided cutting me off would build character? Or maybe the way you supported me when you laughed at my silly business ideas in front of all your friends at this exact club?" The entire dining room had fallen silent now. People were pretending not to listen, but every ear was tilted in our direction. My father's face was red with humiliation. My mother's eyes glossy with the realization that this wasn't just a casual visit, it was a reckoning. I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm and steady. "You two made it very clear I wasn't part of your world, so I built my own. And guess what? My world ended up owning yours." For once, they had no comeback, no sharp remark, no cruel laughter, just stunned silence. Then, with a deliberately casual motion, I picked up my phone and scrolled through the club's app. I pressed a few buttons and looked up at them. "By the way," I added, "your membership dues are 3 months late. Normally, I'd have the manager give you a warning, but since your family..." I paused, letting the moment hang like a blade in the air. "Actually, never mind. Manager!" He appeared instantly, like he'd been waiting for the signal. "Yes, Miss Thompson?" I smiled sweetly. "Cancel their membership. Effective immediately." My mother gasped. My father took a step back as if someone had punched him. Whispers filled the room like a storm, building in the distance. Everyone was watching the mighty Thompsons fall in real time. "As you wish," the manager said with a satisfied nod. I stood up slowly, brushed off my jeans, and walked toward the exit. Each step felt lighter than the last. For years, they made me feel small in this place. That morning, I left it as the queen. The fallout from that Sunday brunch didn't just end. When I walked out of the club's heavy glass doors, it began there. Over the next few weeks, Regency Oaks became the epicenter of whispered gossip, raised eyebrows, and long, dramatic sighs from people who thrived on other people's humiliation. The story of how Sophia Thompson, the awkward jeans girl, had become the owner of the most prestigious club in town spread like wildfire. Every retelling added more color, more drama. Some said my father fainted when he found out. Others claimed my mother threw a glass of champagne in shock. None of that happened. But the truth was far more satisfying. They were silent, stunned and exposed in front of their entire social circle. For decades, my parents had built their identities around this place. Regency Oaks wasn't just a club to them. It was their throne room. Every brunch, every fundraiser, every charity gala, they made sure the Thompsons were the center of attention. My father was the loudest laugh at the table, My mother, the most impeccably dressed woman in the room. They lived for the nods of approval, the flattering whispers, the respect that came with being important. And just like that, it was gone, not because someone ruined it for them, but because their own daughter now sat on the throne they never thought she could reach. The membership cancellations started subtly. A few of their friends who had witnessed the brunch humiliation quietly stopped, inviting them to events. Others stopped picking up their calls. It was the kind of social exile that hurt them more than losing money ever could. My mother, who once hosted glamorous dinner parties, now sat at home scrolling through photos of events she wasn't invited to anymore. My father, who once strutted through the club like a king, now avoided the place entirely. They couldn't stand walking through those doors and seeing my name etched in gold on the ownership plaque. One Friday evening, as I wrapped up a board meeting at the club, I noticed two familiar figures sitting awkwardly in the lobby, my parents. My father's once immaculate suit was slightly wrinkled. My mother's pearls still shone, but her face was tight, like she was trying to hold onto a mask that no longer fit. I almost walked past them, but then my father stood up. "Sophia," he said, his voice lower than usual. Not commanding, almost searching. "We need to talk." For a second, I almost felt like the little girl who used to wait for his approval, but that moment passed quickly. "About what?" I asked calmly. He exchanged a glance with my mother before speaking again. "About everything that happened. We didn't know what you were doing with your life. We didn't understand. Maybe we made mistakes." It wasn't quite an apology, but it wasn't arrogance either. It was something in between, something that came from a man who was realizing he wasn't invincible anymore. I gestured toward the lounge area. "All right, let's talk." We sat down, and for the first time, they didn't look like the powerful socialites they pretended to be. They looked like aging parents who had run out of excuses. My mother spoke first, her voice wavering. "You embarrassed us in front of everyone, Sophia." I almost laughed at the irony. "I embarrassed you? Mom, you called me a garage sale reject in front of your friends. Dad yelled that I looked like a maid in the middle of the dining room. You humiliated me first. I just told the truth afterward." My father rubbed his forehead. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." We were shocked. "You came in looking like the old you. We didn't know you'd become someone worth respecting." I cut in sharply. "Yeah, you didn't know, because you never cared to ask." Silence stretched between us. My mother fidgeted with her necklace, something she always did when she was uncomfortable. My father leaned back, the weight of years finally pressing down on him. "You always thought I wasn't good enough," I continued, my voice firm but calm. "Not classy enough, not polished enough. You laughed when I wore thrifted clothes. You called my business ideas silly. You let me struggle when you could have helped, because you thought I needed to learn a lesson. Well, I did. I learned that I don't need your approval. I built everything on my own. And now you're sitting in my club asking for forgiveness." My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "We were wrong," she whispered. "We didn't see you. We saw what we wanted you to be." That hit deeper than I expected. For a brief second, I saw past the pearls and the judgment, past the Sunday brunch performances. I saw a woman who was terrified of losing control, who lived her entire life performing for others, and who passed that same pressure down to her daughter. I took a slow breath. "I'm not asking you to grovel," I said softly. "But I'm also not going to pretend nothing happened. You treated me like a stranger in this family for years. What happened that day was just the world catching up to the truth you ignored." Then came the moment I didn't see coming. My father, proud, unyielding, loud, looked at me with genuine humility for the first time. "Sophia," he said, "I'm proud of you. Even if I was too blind to say it before, it wasn't dramatic, no grand gestures, just quiet honesty." And weirdly, it was enough. I stood up, straightened my blazer, and looked at them both. "You don't need to be proud of me to be part of my life," I said. "You just need to respect me." Then I turned and walked away, not to hurt them, but to finally close the chapter where their opinions defined my worth. Outside, as the night air hit my face, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't just about humiliating them. It was about reclaiming the power they took from me. And I had done that. The next Saturday arrived like a storm. Everyone was waiting for, but no one saw coming. I slipped into the same pair of jeans my parents had mocked at brunch, but this time I paired them with a crisp white shirt tucked neatly in, a black blazer, and a quiet confidence that felt almost electric. My reflection in the mirror didn't show the insecure daughter they once belittled. It showed the new owner of their favorite luxury club, When I pulled up to the club, my parents were already inside. The place was buzzing with wealthy families, business elites, and their friends, the same crowd that had once made me feel less because I didn't fit their superficial standards. I stepped through the glass doors, ignoring the usual greetings, heading straight to the elevated stage where the microphone stood waiting. A hush spread through the hall as the manager approached and handed me the mic with a smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "please welcome the new owner of the Sterling Lounge, Sophia Winters." My parents froze mid-conversation, their wine glasses still in the air. My father's forced smile wavered. My mother's perfectly arched brows furrowed in confusion. Whispers turned into murmurs, and suddenly all eyes were on me. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady but layered with emotion. "Many of you know me as Sophia, the daughter who grew up watching this club from the sidelines. What you don't know is, a few months ago, when this club was struggling silently under financial pressure, I saw an opportunity." The manager nodded encouragingly from the corner. I continued. "While others laughed at me, I invested quietly, strategically, and today, as I stand before you as the official owner of Sterling Lounge." Gasps echoed through the hall. I turned to look directly at my parents. My father's jaw clenched, my mother's eyes widened with disbelief. "So, next time you laugh at someone's jeans," I added, a sly smile curling at my lips. "I remember, power doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears denim." The audience erupted into applause, not polite but genuine. People who once dismissed me approached with respect, offering congratulations. My parents remained seated, stunned, their world turning upside down in real time. After the speech, I approached their table. My mother stammered, "Sophia, you're the owner. When?" I leaned closer and whispered, "While you were laughing, I was working." Then, without waiting for their reply, I walked away, the sound of clapping still filling the room. That night, I didn't just prove a point, I rewrote the narrative. All their years of belittling me dissolved in one single announcement. They had spent years flaunting their status at this club, never knowing their useless daughter would one day own it. As I stood on the balcony overlooking the glowing city skyline, I couldn't help but smile. They thought they knew everything about me, but what I did next left everyone speechless.